All right. Hello, I want to welcome everyone to panel number 4, Life Stories, Black German and Black German Families in Post-War America. My name is Adrienne Merritt. I'm an assistant professor in the Germanic and Slavic Languages and Literatures Department at University of Colorado Boulder. I have the pleasure of moderating this panel today, but before I introduce the speakers, I would like to remind attendees to ask questions in the Q&A rather than the chat. And so that's not to say don't use the chat. Feel free to use the chat for reactions, comments, anything to engage with each other. But I'm only going to be looking to the Q&A for questions. So let me get started with the introductions. And I will be going in order of that's in the program, just to kind of simplify things. So I'm going to introduce everyone first, and then the Thompsons will have time to speak, and then Denise. Okay, so to start off, Sergeant James Thompson, born December 31st, 1930 in Brooklyn, New York. James Thompson enlisted in the United States Army in 1948. He did his basic training in Fort Dix, New Jersey, April 1948, and went to jump school in July 1948. He left for Germany with 371 Infantry Battalion in 1945. He served in Japan with the 25th Division, 24th Regiment, 3rd Battalion, July 1950 to April 1951. He was in Korea with the 24th Infantry Regiment. He was wounded on April 14th, 1951. He was hospitalized in Japan and transferred to Walter Reed. He went back to Germany until 1959, then was sent to Fort Devon, Massachusetts with the 60th Infantry until 1961. He was then transferred to Fort Dix with the 3rd Battalion K Company. He re-upped to Fort Bragg with the 5th, actually don't know, SF retinue, maybe, after 21 years. My apologies. I am not up on my military abbreviations. James Thompson has devoted his professional career to protecting and serving the people of this great nation. A proud Buffalo soldier for his 21 years of military service, he has earned several honors to include, but not limited to, the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. February 2019, he earned the Thomas Wynn Veteran of the Year Award. James retired for the Willingboro Police Department as a detective. He has been married to his wife for 63 years, and together they have 3 sons and 1 daughter. And next, introduce Catherine Maria Thompson. She is the daughter of Walburga Maria Thiem and Sergeant James Thompson. Catherine was born in Nuremberg, Germany, and currently resides in Willingboro, New Jersey. She's employed with Virtua as a nurse manager for the last 6 years. Catherine has 1 son, Andrew J. Tessendorf, married to Kia Tessendorf. They have 3 children, Gabriella Maria, age 10, Jaden James, age 6, and Kiri Robert, age 1. She is retired from the New Jersey Department of Corrections and attended Burlington County and San Diego Community Colleges. And the final person I would like to introduce today is Denese Walters-Henderson, who was born in Ulm, Germany, and was adopted by Sergeant and Mrs. Stenzel and Eloise Walters at 14 months old. She grew up with 2 adopted siblings as a military brat, and her family settled in Willingboro, New Jersey when she was in junior high. She married Levi Henderson Jr. in 2007 and is First Lady of her husband's congregation, Second Oak Grove Missionary Baptist Church in Valdosta, Georgia. She has 1 fabulous daughter, a wonderful son-in-law, and 3 beautiful grandchildren. She found her biological mother, Alma Sioche Canizzo, in 1989 with the help of William Gage and Leonie Burma. In 1921, after years of searching for the wrong man, she found out who her biological father was with the help of Ancestry and MyHeritage DNA tests. It was a Black serviceman, Melvin Levi Tatum, and she found out she has 14 brothers and sisters. Denise is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She graduated from Lehigh University with a Bachelor's of Arts and in a double major of social psychology and social relations, while at the same time obtaining an undergraduate certification in social work from Moravian College. 35 years later, in 2007, she went back to school and in 2009 received her Master of Science in Marriage and Family from counseling, perhaps, from Radosta State University. She's been a counselor and therapist for more than 15 years, where she has held positions in a variety of settings. These settings have included an alcohol and drug abuse, residential and outpatient facility, Georgia prison system, crisis center, and a community-based service board. She's a certified clinical trauma specialist and trained in eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing, a specialized therapy. Her areas of specialties are trauma, empowerment, substance abuse, and various types of training. In 2020, she began private practice and created Right Fit Therapy and Counseling. The name developed because of her philosophy, which is finding the right fit is critical to achieving results from therapy. If therapy is not working because the client and therapist are not a good fit, the client cannot and must not give up. Instead, to help the client move forward, the therapist and client must collaborate to find another therapist who is the right fit. So I would like to first off start by welcoming Sergeant James Thompson and his family. And we have a slideshow to share as they speak. So whenever you are ready.
Yeah, thank you. My name is James Thompson. And as you say, I'm here with my lovely wife, Maria, Teen Thompson. And, you know, just one little correction on that date of time in Germany. I went back to Germany in 1955. Just want to throw that in, correct it, so the wife don't get upset, you know. Yes, my last trip, my first trip over was in Nuremberg. That's where I met my wife. I was coming from the barracks, from our residence, going to the barracks and by bus. And I used to see her every day, every morning. I would look out and see this little skinny girl walking down the street with her bicycle. So one day I actually stopped. I really stopped, got off the bus and stopped her. And hey, the rest is history, you know? And from there on, we got married and traveled over Europe. Kids was born there. My daughter, Kathy, was born there in Nuremberg. But we was up in Ulm, and then we left Ulm going back to Swabach, you know. But it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. It sounds easy today, but what we went through, getting married, many a times I had to go and shake up the clerk, you know, and talk to the first sergeant. I had to threaten them to get my papers, because they would drop them down in deep six and start all over again. Yeah. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. The chaplain didn't want to sign the paperwork, so I just bypassed him, you know. And a lot people don't understand in the military. It wasn't easy. Okay, but you see, I don't let little things bother me, really, because they find out you're married to a German, you know, they try to tear it back, but it didn't bother me. You got your rank, you talk to them, push them around, and no problem. not a problem. I enjoyed every minute. If I had to do it all over again, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, sweetie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They tried to stop us at the consulate in Munich when we went to Munich with my daughter. They took it up my visa to come to the United States. They put me in a separate office with a couple of people in there, and they told me if I would go to the States, they cannot, I cannot live with the blacks, and I cannot live with the whites. And well, I looked at them and I told them I have to experience it for myself. So they seen they couldn't out-talk me, so they had to give me my visa papers. But everybody tried to stop us from coming over here. So, but after 65 years, you see, we're still in love with each other. We still appreciate each other. We still love life. So color don't mean anything.
Yeah. Well, she's right. A lot of them said it wouldn't work,
Yes.
Yeah. So you look back at them and laugh, But every year we travel back and forth to Europe because my wife still have her sisters and brothers there,
Yes.
And but since this epidemic came up there, we haven't been going lately, but we're really waiting to go. And listen, I enjoy it, like today I came back, got a job, had the same old thing, I remember this one individual's name was Sergeant Payton, Sergeant, well, anyway, he said, "You're married to a white woman, aren't you?" And I said, "No, I'm not married to no white woman. What's wrong with you, man?" He said, I said, "No, my wife's German," and he turned just as red as he could turn, hey, you don't let them get to you, you get to them. The old saying is, you learn the game. You learn their game, they can't change, So far as I'm concerned, everything went great. A lot of the guys in my platoon got married. We went to a couple of their weddings there in Swabach, when we was down in Ulm, or was it Worms?
It was Ulm.
Yeah, Ulm, down in Ulm. They guys got married there in that little base. Where was that? New Ulm, Ulm.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, So, in Nuremberg, same old thing. Get along with everybody, But like I'm not stupid now, because we come back to the States, was it 68, January, I had orders going to
Fort Polk, Louisiana.
Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I kind of smiled on it. My wife said, "What?" I said, "Don't even worry about it." I said, "While we on leave, I'll go down to DC." And that's what I did. I went down to DC, got my orders changed,
That's why we ended up in Fort Dix.
Yeah, we ended up in Fort. Matter of fact, that's how I ended up in Willingboro.
Yes.
I had no intention of staying in Willingboro. I wanted to go back to Brooklyn. My wife didn't want to go, so we ended up in Willingboro. And just as happy as I can be. Willingboro was very quiet back then, and we was one of the very few mixed marriages that moved in Willingboro at that time, because I know there was a bunch of the guys married, that came in. They was at Fort Dix with us stationed. We had quarters at the base, and that's what really happened. We was living in quarters on base when I got orders to go back to Vietnam. So we had to find somewhere to live. And Sergeant Adams, my first sergeant, brought me here to Willingboro, and his wife was from Berlin, and it went pretty good. So we got a home here. We first moved to Charleston Road, and then we moved to Twin Hills. So And on my job, you really, really had to be careful what you said, what you did, because they were looking. And if they could really, really put something to you, they would. And not, and all, because it's not because of me, it's because I was married to a German. That's what it was. And you have to be stupid if you don't pay attention to it. Okay? Anything you want to say, Betty?
No, we just appreciate every day
Mhm.
that we here with our age. My husband is 90, and I'm gonna be 86. So we thank God every day,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
our life.
Yeah, we have quite a few friends, and we travel a lot. We got our son down in North Carolina. Now he was in Georgia. We all used to run 295 down there to Savannah to see him when he was stationed there. But he's happy. He's just as happy as he can be. He stayed in the military. He did 20 years in the military. And he's married down there. And I have my guardian with us. Okay, can't go nowhere without her. That's my daughter. Can't breathe without her. And like to thank Glenn for bringing us in on this.
Yes.
And with the other tape that we did was, what was it, the name?
A breath of freedom.
Breath of Freedom.
Yeah.
It was all about the same thing that we're
Mixed
talking,
marriages.
mixed marriages
Yes.
in Europe too. And that was a very, very nice tape. Good friends of ours, the Johnsons, Merritt, and daughter Patsy Johnson, a lot of people are here. And we all went through the same thing, okay? No ifs, ands, and buts about it. You went through the same thing. But all my partners, nobody, didn't get hurt. Then nobody let them down, okay? And we was really, really, really good at it, okay?
Introduced Kathy.
And then now, right, at this time, I see my great grandkids there, but at this time, I like to introduce my daughter, Catherine Thompson.
Hi. So I was asked to come and speak to you on how it was to be raised by a Black father and a German mother. And to be honest, I could talk for days about this, but to sum it up in just a couple words is I had the best of both worlds. My brother and I were exposed to both sides. We got to go to Germany, summer vacations. We got to spend summers with my mom's family, getting to know them and love them. We got to visit castles, that we normally wouldn't have seen here, and then, the other side to that is, we went on family reunions and got to spend a lot of time with my dad's family, my grandmother, who, was very big in our lives, I will say this too, now that you see them and you've got to hear them, my dad, first and foremost, let me just tell you this, he's my hero. He showed my brother and I how to, a woman should be loved. He took such good care of my mom, physically and emotionally. And he showed us how to love our children, and support them. And he's my hero. We had a really good upbringing. I will say this, growing up as a little girl, I can remember being in stores and people looking at my mom, staring at my mom. And as a little girl, I didn't know, what that was. As a little girl, I can remember thinking, wow, they must be looking at her and thinking how beautiful she is. Because, that's my mom. I thought, she's beautiful. That's what I thought they were looking at, but as I got older and, started realizing, the world that we were living in, I realized, they were looking at her and thinking, what's that white woman doing with those Black kids? What is, and, just the innocence of a child, and just being protected by them and, not having to deal with those kind of things at such a young age, just the whole experience was, we were well protected. And then, even as a young girl in school, dealing with other children and, constantly being asked, are you white? Little Black kids, are you white? Where'd you get those green eyes from? Who's that woman? When my mom would pick me up, but always being Black through white eyes. There was never, oh, you're white. Mm-mm. They know exactly that, that we weren't white. Same with my dad. A lot of times people would see us with him and they'd stare at him too, but again, just being part of a family that, we were taught we're beautiful, we deserve everything that everybody else does, and it was a really good upbringing. And I'm so thankful, at that time, my dad, he really stood up. My mom and dad were not married when I was conceived. And my dad was not leaving. He was not leaving us.
No.
He could have left, he could have, but he didn't. He stayed.
Yeah.
He made sure me and my mom were with him. He didn't leave us. He took us with him, and for me, my life could have turned out so much differently. And I'm so thankful every day that this is my dad, so Lynn asked me to come and just say a couple words about, how it was for me, growing up in this family. And it was great. I had a really great upbringing. And my son, I married a German Black also. So his father is also German and Black. So, knowing that my son and my grandkids now have this wonderful organization, thank you, Lynn, to, know their heritage, both sides is very comforting, So, Lynn, thank you so much for letting me boast about, these two wonderful people that I was raised by. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody for listening to us. It's been our honor.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
We love you
too,
too.
Lynn.
That's my stepdaughter.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I love just the hearing about families and different connections. That's what I think is really powerful, Okay. All right. So next I would like to invite Denese Walters-Henderson to speak.
Oh, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I don't know what time it is. I'm confused. I was listening to the Thompsons, and I actually had tears in my eyes. I found out right before the conference that he knew my adopted father. And my mother worked at Fort Dix on the PX, running all of that area. And there was a German and Black couple across the street from me that I knew, but Lynn, well, we called her Lynn, but it's Rosemary. There were many of us that were Black and German in the school system, and we didn't know it. We had no idea that there were so many of us. And I always wanted to find my mother, And I didn't know anybody who could help me write a letter to her in German. And so it was years before I found her, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to share my screen now. Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back. Sorry. Come out. Let me come back out for a minute because I have to put share. I forgot. Share screen. Share. Now, I think I'm in. When I was born, my name was Carmen Sylvia, and I'm not real sure how to pronounce the last part, but I think it's Sersha, something like that. And Sylvia was actually my mother's name, my biological mother's name. Her name was Alma Sylvia. These are my parents who adopted me. And of course, that's me in the middle. That's our first family photo, which was taken in Germany. And Mr. Thompson mentioned being in Ulm, and then they said, well, was it Neu-Ulm, N-E-U or N-U-E or something like that? But that's actually where I was born. And I was born on February 6, 1954. So I just had a birthday and turned 68. And I was blessed to have these two people in my life. I found these pictures when I was little. Easter was a big thing for my family, and we always dressed up. My mother used to say she used to buy new clothes from the inside out, underwear, socks, nothing was old. And then my parents played a lot of pinochle. And so this was a pinochle party they had, and I don't know who took this picture, but obviously I was hanging out. This was my dad and I when I was about 13 or 14. And we had a very interesting relationship. I was the apple of his eye until I reached puberty. And then I think he got scared of me. And we kind of, he told me once that he argued with me because I was the only one in the family who gave him a good argument. So sometimes his way of playing was to pick at you a little bit. And so, but I knew he loved me with all of his heart, because my mother said that when they adopted me, I ran up to him and he picked me up and it was love at first sight. I was supposed to be adopted by a chaplain that was in the service who was adopting children from all over the world, but he got orders to leave. And so he introduced me to my parents that I was adopted by. And I know that God knows what he was doing because they were the right people for me. But because family was so important, I began to attach myself to my adopted family. And I knew more about my mother's family because they were family oriented. And this gentleman in this picture who looks so light, they put him in the census as white and his children as colored. This was her grandfather, my great grandfather, Jimmy Winston. And this was her mother's mother, her grandmother, and her brothers. And these were my grandparents, my mother's parents. And then over here on the other side where you see all those people, those are my aunts and uncles, my mother's brothers and sisters and their wives. And only 3 people in this picture are living at this time. Everybody else has passed on, but family became very important to me. And then I started school. My dad was in the Air Force, not the Army. And we went to different Air Force bases. I believe this picture where I have the pigtails was taken at Dover Air Force Base when I was in the 1st grade. And the other one was right after Easter. I got my new Easter dress and I got the butterfly headband. And that was, I think I was in 3rd grade, and my brother had been born by then. And this is when I was 16, going to school in Willingboro. And my brother was born 7 years after I was adopted. And my mother had been told she couldn't have any children because she had fibroid tumors. And that's kind of how I got adopted. And so when my brother came, it was a big surprise. And my story of remembering how I was told was that she was combing my hair And she, of course, had a pregnant stomach. And I asked her if I was born like that. And she said, no, I never got to have you in my stomach. You were adopted. And she explained what that meant. Now, before she passed away, I was telling that story, and my mother said, that's not what happened. But she could never tell me what happened. So I'm sticking with my story because I don't know any other story. This is my family. I had just graduated from Lehigh University, and my mother was from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And if you see, there's a little girl down here. That's my sister who was born when I was a freshman in college. So the joke for my mother was she was just slow in having children. I almost didn't make it to my college because when she told me that she was pregnant when I was a senior, I just fell on the floor and started laughing. And she was not pleased by that. And then my brother announced to the whole neighborhood that his mother was pregnant. She hadn't told anybody. And the first people she told Mr. Thompson were the Ruckers. That's whose house he ran to. In 2007, I got married, and this is a picture of my mother and my baby sister at my wedding. And then on the other side, remember I told you family was important. And we used to have a lot of barbecues and things in Willingboro because we had a big field behind our house. And this is all of us hanging out, uncles and cousins. Then I graduated from Lehigh University. I was one of the first Black women to graduate from there. They did not admit women till 1971, and those were transfer students. So in 1972, they admitted their first class of females as freshmen, and there were 6 Black women in my class, and I was one of them. And I did graduate, so I was one of the first 3 Black women to graduate. And a little while later, that newspaper article is that they hired me as their first full-time minority recruiter to have more African Americans. And then in 1988, I had my daughter. This was in 89. And it's got a little stain on it, but this is my favorite picture of me and my daughter. And then last year she got married, and she turned into a beautiful, beautiful young lady. And her husband saw me putting this slide presentation, and he said, where's my picture? So that is, this is, the shorter one is him, and the other one is her brother, her father's son. And these are my beautiful grandchildren. They are now 10, 9, and 7. And I believe in this picture, I think she was the youngest one, maybe was 4. I showed you these pictures because this was the family that I knew. And in 1989, I was watching a show with Oprah Winfrey, and she had a reunion show where, she reunites family, and she gave the name of this foundation called the Master Foundation. And I called them, and they said they didn't do foreign-born adoptions, but they gave me the name of William Gage. William Gage then told me he only did a newsletter for German-born adoptees, but he gave me the name of Leonie Bermer. I called her. I sent her $5 and a power of attorney to find my mother. And a week later, she called me and told me she had found her. And I sent my mother a letter, and I had been told by Leonie that some German mothers who lived in Germany did not want to acknowledge that they had a mixed child. So I didn't want to cause her any problems. So I sent her a letter that said, my adopted mother said that you could help me find my biological mother. And if you can, will you write me back or call this number collect? And one day I was sitting at home and my phone rang, and they said that I had a collect call from Germany. And I answered the phone, and it was my mother. And we talked a little bit, and it was funny because I remember being kind of emotionless, not like really responding, reacting. And when I got off the phone, I called my adopted mother and I burst into tears. I'm even tearing up as I tell this story because there was a hole in my heart for a long, long time. I wanted to know who I was, where I came from. And I burst into tears. My mother thought something had happened to the baby. And I told her that my mother had called. And you know, she was an unusual woman, my mother, adopted mother, because she wanted me to find my mother. She gave me all the paperwork from my adoption. So I knew where she lived, I knew her name. And that made it easy for Leonie to find her, because she told me in Germany, they have to register when they move. They have to let the police know where they're moving to. So she was able to find her. I talked to her, she apologized for her English, and I told her she's doing a lot better than me because she spoke English, Italian, French, and German. I told her I barely speak English. They don't call this English, they call it American. And she kind of laughed. And I asked her later about my father, and she told me that he was Puerto Rican and that his name was Juan Pedro Perez, and that they wanted to get married, but her father wouldn't let her. The American Army would not let her marry him, and they shipped him out. Well, years later, I took a DNA ancestry test and found out none of that was true, that my father was African American. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my husband and myself at church. I love my hats, by the way. That's an English hat. I saw it at Meghan and the prince's wedding. Somebody had that hat on. And this is me in front of the building where I work. And this is my biological father. They say he was a great dancer. He loved to party. He loved to drink. And he got shipped out in October of '55 and left the Army. His name is Melvin Levi Tatum. This is the brother that I found on Ancestry. And I called him. He works in Washington, D.C. And he gave me all the information. And I didn't really understand the test. And when he said, no, I'm not a first cousin or anything. I'm your brother. And he explained how the test goes. And so what we surmised was this, that my mother had been dating my father. They had planned to get married. They shipped him out instead. And she started dating this guy, Juan Pedro Perez, but she didn't know she was pregnant. And so when she and Juan were going to get married, and they had all these obstacles in the way, and then they shipped him out, she found out she was pregnant after he left. And she didn't know how to reach him because they would not give her any information. And so she just assumed I was his baby, but I was actually Melvin's baby. And these are two other brothers. And I lived in Chattanooga for 10 years, and I live in Valdosta, which is 3 hours from Atlanta. Chattanooga's an hour and a half. Both of them live in Atlanta. So for years, I was only an hour and a half from my brothers and didn't know it. And I have a sister in Atlanta too. She didn't come to the dinner. The sisters seemed to have a harder time accepting me than the brothers did. The brothers kind of embraced me, but the sisters kind of stood back. And I heard that a couple of them said, we don't have any sister. And I found out I'm the oldest of all his children. And I think that kind of irritated some of the young ladies. And so we went to a seafood restaurant. My nephew came. And then my brother decided to bring his family to Valdosta to visit. So they came to my house, spent 4th of July. They were going to spend one night. They spent 3. We had a great time. I cooked. I have a pool in my backyard. The kids had a great time. And then finally, one of the sisters came around and she invited me. What I didn't say is, he's from Oklahoma. I was like, Oklahoma? From a little town called Kingfisher, Oklahoma, near Oklahoma City. And this is my sister. She's the baby of the family. Her name's Rhonda. And she invited me to Oklahoma for Thanksgiving this year. And I went, I met her family. She has a fabulous family. And where she's sitting in the picture with the potato chips and all of that, that is actually in Kingfisher. She took me to my father's hometown. And they still have a counter like in Mayberry, you know, with the malts, and this is in the drugstore. And so we had a malt and some other sandwich that she liked, but I didn't like it. And we spent time together and got to know each other. She's a lovely woman. She told me a lot about my father from her perspective, which is interesting because the perspective of the first brother that I showed you and the older ones are different. There's like, he was involved with my older brother's mother and had 3 children, married Rhonda's mother, and had 11 more. So I have 14 brothers and sisters. And then we found a call from a young lady who said she was our niece. And it turns out he has another daughter who is part Native American. So he was a busy guy. They sent me his obituary so I could see everybody's name. And he died in May of 2001. So I didn't get to meet him. And I never got to tell him that I existed. And that's the picture that I took to end the slide presentation, because this is who I've grown into. What I didn't tell you was the years that I was in Willingboro, how I wasn't Black, I wasn't white. And yeah, they knew I was mixed, but they saw 2 Black parents, so they were confused. And actually, my father's parents thought I was his biological daughter because I look a lot like his mother. And the interesting thing is my mother's name was Alma Sylvia and my father's name was P. Alma Neely. So I thought that was very interesting. And I had a lot of people think because you get adopted, and it was interesting. My husband said to me when I told him I was doing this just a little while ago, I said, I got to get on this conference. I'm doing a presentation. He said, about what? You didn't tell me. And I did, but he forgets. I said, about being Black and being adopted. And he said, what do you know about adoption? And he said, I mean, after you got adopted, you just had a normal childhood, didn't you? And he said, so what's so different about being adopted that if you got adopted at an early age? And I was like, you just don't understand. You don't get it. Because if you don't know where you came from, you're kind of scared to know where you're going. You know, I didn't know. I hate going to the doctor and they say, is there any heart problems in your family? Is there any cancer, et cetera, et cetera? And I had to say, I don't know. When I was pregnant with my daughter, everything was, I don't know. So I had to get an amniocentesis to make sure I didn't have any birth defects. And that's a scary procedure because I was almost 35 when she was born. So I got along with most of the kids at the high school. And I became a rabid activist. I mean, I became Blacker than Black because I wanted to be Black. I didn't want to identify with any other race. And people would say, oh, you look Puerto Rican. I'd go, I'm not Puerto Rican, I'm Black. And so I just kept trying to find myself. I turned to drugs and alcohol for a while, not heavily, but enough to know that it was becoming a problem. And so I got into recovery. And I've been clean 26 years. And my life has changed. I finally know who I am. I'm okay with who I am. I'm more courageous. I've been teaching my grandchildren and my daughter about their history. Unfortunately, I have a picture of my mother, but I put it up and I can't find it. I don't know if that comes with age or what, but I don't know what I did with it. I'll probably find it tomorrow since the conference is over. But Rosemarie and myself and Doris Walker went to lunch one day because my sister was in the hospital. She had had a stroke. And they came to Philly to take me to lunch so I would leave the hospital. And that's when we found out we were all German adoptees. And we all had that in common. We didn't really talk that much. I mean, I talked to Rosemarie a little, but Doris and I didn't talk that much, even though we were in the same class. So for anybody who thinks that because we left Germany and got adopted, it made everything okay, that's not true. It's not true because they didn't let me stay in contact with my mother. I didn't know how to speak German. I lost all that German culture, although I love German food. So some of it, I guess, is genetic, I don't know. But I wish I had known Miss Thompson because I would have adopted her as my other mother. Because I really wanted to know. I tried to take German in school, in college and high school, but when they started talking about dative case, objective case, feminine nouns, I was like, oh no, I don't get any of that. How can a noun be feminine? If it is not a he or a she, I'm not with it. I can't figure it out. So I did pass it, and I can read it a little better than I can speak it. And I know a few words, but I remember my mother telling me, and I'm going to close, she took me downtown in Germany, and some lady came and grabbed me by the hand and started walking away with me. And so after that, she put this, you know how you see the kids now with the zip up little harness and their parents have a leash on them? So I had one of those in 1955. And she said that they decided to leave Germany because I was being called Schwarze-Kinder. And she said that meant nigger child. And she didn't want me. And I realized that I grew up with issues of abandonment, even though I knew my mother had given me away with all the purest reasons so that I would have a great life like I have, that I would go to the university, that I would become the woman that I am today. And she felt she had no education. I was in an orphanage for a little while because she couldn't take care of me. And so she did what she thought was best, which was ask if someone would adopt me and bring me to America. So I understood all of that, but in my heart of hearts, I kept saying, isn't there some way she could have kept me? Isn't there? Why didn't her family help her? Why didn't they love me? I got lots of love from my adopted family. And I was so happy to find my biological family. And now I know who I am even more, and I know what to expect. And I love all of them for loving me. Thank you.
Oops. Thank you so. Oops. Thank you so much, Denise, for sharing your story and all the photos, and also Thompson's. You know, this is something I'm so grateful for BGHRA that exists, just because there's so many stories, and that's something that a person, but I know others and Rosemary all worry about, is that there are these stories and there's a potential for connections, or not even realizing that there's connections like we saw today, you know, that we don't hear about, you know, and really that's, you know, at the end of the day, it's those personal connections that are the most significant. It's the family, it's the kinships, it's the communities. I'm going to turn to some questions. We have about 12 minutes left. And actually, some of these have already been addressed, but there's one question about, and Denise, you've touched upon this a little bit, but this question reads, could James and Denise share if they've engaged with learning German? If so, what has that experience been like, and what obstacles were present?
Was that directed to me?
To both. Really, actually, I would say to anyone.
Can you read it again? I missed some of it.
Mhm.
Is the questions about learning German, which you've shared a bit, Denise, about what the experience was like, but also maybe if there are some obstacles maybe that you faced when learning German.
You can answer that.
Yeah, Thompson here. Yes, I learned German, and it was to me, it was very easy because I was a young man, you know. It's very, very easy. I was around 16, 17 when I first went to Germany. And I was so good in German, I used to read the paper on the Bahnhof, on the Straßenbahn, going back to camp. I used to read the paper. I used to have all of them looking at me on the trolley car. My wife tell you. And we spoke a lot of German because her parents and her brothers and sisters all spoke German. Hey, to get along in the family, I had to learn German.
And I'll just tell you this, I took German in high school and I failed terribly. I did not pass, and I didn't pass because you know, I was going to my mom for help, but everything that they were teaching in German, I believe, is Hochdeutsch.
Hochdeutsch, yeah.
And that's not what my mom knows. So for me, no. The German language is difficult. I understand it and I can speak the basics, you know, to communicate, but I couldn't hold a long conversation with anybody outside the Thompson family.
Well, for me, the problem was I took it in high school. I had a really good teacher. His name was Mr. Savage. And I did well in high school. But if you don't know what a dative case is in English, and if we don't talk about if something is a masculine or a feminine pronoun, then how am I going to know it when they go to college and they start trying to teach that to me? The interesting thing was in German 1, I got a D. So you would think that I would fail German 2, right?
Mhm.
I got a C. I don't understand how that happened. But what I learned was they don't speak what I call real German. They speak like we have proper English for the business. That's the German that they use. They're not using the German that they speak in Ulm or in
Correct.
Berlin. Excuse me. I have something in my throat. I promise I don't have COVID, but you're not clear and close, so you'll be fine. So I struggled when I really wanted to learn it so badly. And then if you don't use the language, you're going to forget it even if you do well in school. So my parents didn't speak it. I didn't practice it with anybody. So I never really learned it.
Yeah, but you see, depends on where you travel in Germany and where you're at, because every area have a different dialect.
Dialect, yes.
You have your
Irish,
Bayerisch,
Hochdeutsch,
Dutch down in Worms, and Swabach is
different areas
different
have a
area.
different,
because we left Nuremberg and we went to Worms. My wife couldn't understand a word they were saying. She couldn't understand a word, and I picked it right up. What Dutch was that? That was
more Hochdeutsch.
yeah, more Hochdeutsch or something. But so it's German language. It's a rough language because you really just have to listen. I learned all mine going in and out of guest houses. It's a lot of fun. It's fun.
But it's
Yeah.
like here
Yeah.
in the United States, Southern people can hardly understand the people from New York. It's different dialects. It's the same in Germany.
Yeah, them country people, man, they can't speak English at all.
I'm talking about country people. My daddy's family
I
was
knew
country.
that would get to you.
We say chicken.
Yeah. You go to Boston and you can't understand a word they're saying. The pie.
No, you have parties and you park the car.
Yeah, and all that, you know.
Yes.
So,
It's interesting. So my grandmother was born of Austrian and Schlesian immigrants, but never learned German herself because they were trying to make sure that she was very American. And but what the interesting kind of byproduct is that several children, including myself, fluently speak German. So sometimes it's an interesting kind of, you're wanting to reach back, and to make that connection. Okay, so the next question is for Denise. And the question reads, it seems listening to your story, the question of identity and identity formation go deeper than being raised by an adopted family. And so how crucial was the prospect of meeting your biological parents or other family members? And at what point did it become important to you?
Well, I always wanted to, but it became crucial when my daughter was born. When I was going through my pregnancy, I was really upset that I didn't know anything about possible genetic things. I did find out later that my mother did pass away from a heart attack. And so I don't know if she had heart disease or it was just a one time, because when I called Germany to speak to her, her husband hung up on me. And every time I called back, and he's Italian, and every time I called back, he would hang up. So I thought maybe it was because I didn't speak German and he didn't know what I was asking. So I had some people who speak German call him, and he hung up as soon as he heard my name. So I don't know how she died, what happened. I have a sister in Germany. She does not talk. She never talked to me. She was sitting in the kitchen when my mother called me, but she wouldn't get on the phone. And I know I have two nieces because my mother sent me a picture of them and my sister. And I don't know if my sister was upset because she found out she wasn't an only child, but my mother was telling me that my biological mother told me that every Christmas she would put my picture on the mantelpiece and include me in their Christmas. So she must have known I existed. But, knowing somebody exists and hearing them is two different things, because as long as you don't hear from them or see them, they're just a maybe. It was important to me to find my dad. I've been looking for him for years. I joined a group on Facebook. I wrote to the military, but of course, all my information was wrong. So they couldn't find him. I went to Puerto Rico a couple times. They were going to put me on a Puerto Rican show to ask about it. But the only Juan Pedro Perez they found came to Germany after I was born. So that didn't fit. But when I found out who my dad really was, I started an ancestry tree and I found out so much rich history. Oh my gosh, my grandmother was a midwife. They were not your average Black family in Oklahoma, but I didn't admit it because I wanted to seem so strong. But when all of the family did not accept me, it hurt my feelings. And I went to Atlanta because the sister who lived in Atlanta that wouldn't come and meet me had a major stroke. So all the children came to Atlanta. So my daughter and I drove up to the hospital because I thought this is my one opportunity to meet everybody. And they had had a fight with one of the brothers. So when we got there, they were all dispersing. And what did happen was they ended up at one of the brothers that I had gone to dinner with. They ended up at his house. So I went. And one of my sisters went to the store and never came back because she didn't want to meet me. She didn't want to talk to me. And since then, I've gotten a message that she has had a change of heart and she wished she had met me when I went to Oklahoma. But I have one sister, when we went to Kingfisher, she told my youngest sister, don't bring her by my house. So those kinds of things hurt because it's not my fault that they didn't know about me. He didn't know about me. But I understand that to them, it feels intrusive. And if you already got 13 brothers and sisters, do you really want another one? So it's crucial to me to know that family history, which is why I've been researching on Ancestry again. And it's great to feel accepted by the ones who do accept me. And that's where I finally got to. Love the ones who love me and the ones who don't. I'm sorry you don't get to meet a fabulous woman in your life and a big sister who cares about family and would be there for you. So that's your loss, as long as you don't. And that's where I finally got to. But I will tell you, sometimes it hurts, and I don't want to take anything away from my adopted family. Somebody said, looks like you had a happy childhood. I had a great childhood. I was spoiled rotten. There wasn't, if I said I wanted something, my dad would say, go get it. So it wasn't like that. It wasn't about material things. It was about knowing where I fit, And I realized that wherever you're loved is where you fit. It doesn't matter who's doing the loving.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take, I know that our panels come to, the time is up, but I'd like to just, if people have time for just one more question. And it is, it's asking Catherine. So how was your experience as the daughter of a mixed race family in Germany? Was it similar to the US or was it different?
So I think I was a baby when we left Germany. I wasn't raised in Germany. I was raised here. I think we came to the United States in 68,
Mhm.
in 1968. But I can say, you know, every time we went back, because we did go back often, almost every
You went
summer.
back by yourself too?
You know, we were exposed to my cousins, all of my cousins, and, you know, they were all welcome and loving and, you know, accepting. They loved my dad, you know. So I couldn't answer that question because I wasn't raised in Germany. I just know my experiences when we went back.
Thank you. So we've gone a little bit over our time, but I think a minute is okay. I want to thank everyone again so much for taking the time to share all of these thoughts and feelings and stories and everything. It's so important, and I appreciate all of this. And so thank you so much, and we'll kind of air clap because we're not in. We're not.
Mr. and
all in the
Mrs.
same
Thompson,
room.
when I come to Willingboro for my reunion, can I look you up?
Of course, yes, stop by the house, you're welcome.
Denise,
I'll find you.
Denise,
Okay,
I think I know your sisters. Your youngest, the last one, was her name Olivia? Yes, and
Yes.
they were very close. Your father was very close to our neighbor, Al Little. Do you remember the Littles?
Oh, yeah, I just, yeah, their
Pookie,
son and my brother share the same birthday.
yes, so Mr. Little was like family, Pookie and Mrs. Little and Bina. So
We used to
it's what
babysit.
a
Mhm.
small world this
yes,
is, right?
yes.
So yeah, we know them very well.
She know.
Well, I know they have to go to another one. Rosemary has my phone number. I'm gonna ask her to give it to you. And if you guys will call me and just leave a message, because my phone silences unknown numbers. So I would love to talk to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a
Bye.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.